You right there, Jen? Scratching your chops on my laptop? Hello guys. Well, today I want to talk about Lightroom. Now, I've been using Lightroom for the past, 7 or 8 years, whenever it was that I started my photography journey. And during that time, I've learned what I consider to be a very useful set of tricks that I use in basically every single edit. And so in today's video, I wanted to cover those tips and tricks just for you. And I'm hoping to do so in about 10 minutes or so. And I think with that said, we've got about 9 minutes and 20 seconds left. So let's jump into Lightroom and get started. All right, so the first tip I wanted to talk about has everything to do with cropping. Now, as most of you will know, the crop tool is up here, and this is where we're able to crop our images, mostly into 4:5 if we're posting on Instagram, maybe 3:2 for a website, 16:9 for stories. You get the idea. But there is a little trick you can use inside the crop tool, and that is when you've got it open, simply press O. And that is going to give you different crop overlays that are going to help you to, finalize the crop for your image. Now, if I scroll through these, this one right here might be useful where it divides it in 4. Perhaps I'll decide to move the crop down a little bit to have that center point right between the subject and his reflection. This one also works really well too. Maybe you see these diagonal lines here. Maybe I want to keep the reflection, the head in the reflection and the head of the subject equidistant from the top and bottom line. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, moving on to the second image and tip, and here I want to talk about straightening your images. Now, if we go over to the crop tool, of course we can use auto straighten to do this, and yep, that does a pretty decent job. But if I undo that and open up the crop tool again, you can also use this ruler to create your straightened horizon line. So if we tap there on that side of the ocean and drag it over here, that is going to give us a perfectly straight image. I sometimes find that the auto feature doesn't actually work that well, and so I like to use the ruler as and when I need it. Moving on to the third tip and our third image here from Teglalang rice terraces in Bali, I wanted to talk a little bit about clipping. Now, if you look at the histogram here, you'll see that the triangle on the left, which shows this shadow clipping, and this triangle on the right, which shows the highlight clipping. Now, at the moment, those triangles have not been highlighted. However, if I move the highlights across to the right, you'll notice that our highlights are now clipping as indicated by this white triangle. And if I drag the blacks down, you'll notice that the shadows are now clipping. Now, we might we might sometimes miss out on those eliminated triangles. So all you want to do when you start your editing process is hit J. And that is going to bring up this color overlay. Now, the highlight clipping is indicated by these red areas. And if I bring the highlights back down to 0, you'll see that that disappears. And if I do the same with the black slider, you'll notice that that blue overlay color has now been removed. Very useful, as any parts of the image that are clipping, be it in the shadows or the highlights, technically means that you have absolutely no information in that part of the image. And we don't want that. Now, moving on to image 4, I just wanted to talk very, very quickly about resetting sliders. Now, let's say, okay, we got this edit from Yamunigat in New Delhi. Quite happy with how it looks, but maybe there's a couple of additions I want to make. So maybe I want to drag the highlights down. Maybe I'm going to bring the whites up. Maybe I want to go crazy with the vibrance. And perhaps for some strange reason, I really like that ugly yellow color. Anyway, resetting sliders. You might think that you have to, oh God, I've got to drag this slider of the highlights all the way back down. No. All you need to do is double tap highlights. Is double tap whites, double tap blacks, and it's going to reset your sliders. Now, if you look down at the present section when we've got texture, clarity, vibrance, saturation, and dehaze, maybe you want to reset that entire section. And to do so, all you would need to do is double tap presence, and that's going to reset everything in that section. Moving on to tip number 5, I wanted to talk about sharpening and masking. Now, if I scroll down a little bit here on the side panels to our sharpening module, you'll see that the sharpening is set to 40, and that is the default for any image, I believe, when importing it into Lightroom, and it does a pretty good job. It looks pretty clean. However, there may be some areas of the image where we don't want the sharpening to be applied. One of those being the sky, as it adds a lot of noise and grain that we might not necessarily want in that part of the shot. So, to get rid of this, we are going to come down to this masking section here. You're going to hold Option on Mac, I think Alt on Windows, I have no idea, I haven't used one for 10 years, and you simply want to drag up on the masking slider, and you'll notice that the image goes from pure white and slowly fades out that white. Now, the white areas are the parts of the shot that are being affected by this sharpening adjustment, and the black areas are the parts that are not. So you can see there, if I move the masking to 0 and zoom in on the sky, a lot of sharpening, quite a bit of noise. If I move that back up to 60, the sky is now a lot softer, and that works well, honestly, on pretty much any shot you're going to be putting into Lightroom. Hey guys, George from the future here. On the topic of sharpening your photos and then, masking out that sharpening slightly, I did want to mention one quick little tip. So we'll add this to the 10 or 11 that I'm already doing. But if you scroll down very quickly, beneath that sharpening tab in the detail tab, you're going to see this DeNoise feature, which Lightroom added fairly recently, and it actually works really well, especially on those higher ISO images. Now, this one in particular, I shot at ISO 800, so if we click on DeNoise, you can see the difference that it makes. If we look at the shot here, as it loads, tons of color noise and other noise, and if I hold down to click before and after, you can see the difference that it makes. Obviously, this before and after is kind of bullshit. I think the before and after is compared without the color noise reduction in that detail panel, just so you know. And you can, of course, experiment with the denoise amount. If we take it up to 30, it gets even more buttery. But yeah, you can play around with that. Anyway, back to Jord in the past. Okay, tip number 6. Now, I have already edited this photo a bunch, and so when I open up the mask panel, you're going to notice that there's already a ton of masks that have been applied to this shot. However, I wanted to talk about intersecting with a mask and how that can be really useful. So let's say, we're looking at our image here and I'm thinking, I think this could do with a slightly brighter area around our subject in the boat to highlight him a little bit more effectively. So perhaps we're going to open our mask, get a plus and radial gradient, and I've misclicked radial gradient. So we're going to open this one here. I am going to bring the feathering down to 60. Okay, now if we press O to get rid of the overlay, we're going to take the exposure up. Let's say to 0.2. Okay, great. So we've now highlighted the subject and the water surrounding him, but I just want to increase the exposure in the water to try and highlight that slightly more darker and contrasty subject. So to do so, we can right click, intersect mask with, and color range, and then I'm going to click on the color of the water, and if I hit O to see an overlay, you can see that it's done a pretty decent job. Sure, it's tried to expose parts of the t-shirt and whatnot and parts of the arm. It's not completely accurate, but all you need to do to get rid of this is hit minus, brush, and then you can slowly brush over your subject, perhaps make sure that auto mask is turned on, and that's going to take care of seeking out the edges of this erasing process. It's also, I think, added a lot of it to the boat. But again, we've got auto mask on our brush, and it's going to very, very quickly get rid of those slight mistakes. All right, next up, I want to talk about calibration, which is, to be quite honest, one of the most overlooked panels in the Lightroom app. Now, to find it, we need to inconveniently scroll all the way to the bottom of the panels, which probably explains why it's so forgotten. Now, calibration, to put it simply, is tweaking the overall mix of colors in your image. So when you hear people say, oh, I like Canon colors for skin tones, or I like using the Nikon because the landscape colors look great, they are talking about the calibration of the colors in that camera, which in essence is what we're going to be affecting in this panel. And it differs slightly from HSL. Now with HSL, if I quickly scroll up and I change the blue hue over to the right, it gets cooler, and over to the left, the blue gets warmer. That's because HSL is only affecting the colors as we see them on the screen. Whereas calibration, be it the red, green, or blue primary hue or saturation, we're actually affecting the blue pixels across the entire image. Hopefully I got that right. Otherwise it's going to be embarrassing for me. So if we move the blue hue to the left, you'll notice that not only does the water get slightly warmer, but it brings out this beautiful kind of orange color in the sand. So by moving that to 20, and then perhaps with the green hue, moving that up to the right, and the saturation as well, just a couple of adjustments there have really helped me to attain the color grade that I'm looking for in my image, and I highly recommend you try using calibration if you haven't already. Moving on, and I fear that I am coming up on my 10 minutes. I may have already come up on that 10 minutes. But this is just a quick tip about syncing your edits and trying to make the editing process a little bit quicker, which I find to be particularly useful if I've got a bunch of similar kind of perspectives in the same light taken at the same place. So we've got this shot here that I took to the Hong Kong Tourism Board recently, and I've got an edit that I'm pretty happy with here on this first shot. Now, if I go over to the other two shots, be it this and this, they remain unedited, but there's a quick way around that. So for selecting the image with the edit that we actually want, all you need to do is hold Command, click on 9 and 10, those other images, and hit sync. I'm not going to sync with the masks here, and I think I'm also going to turn off the crop sync because I think I might have gone for a slightly different crop. I just want the same color grade. And then we're going to hit synchronize. And if I now open our other two images, you can see the before and after that we've synced, and the before and after we synced. Didn't work as well in this third image, but you get the point. All right, moving on to, what is this? Number 9. We're almost there. This is just a quick one about previewing your photos. So, you know, when you feel as though you're happy with an edit you've made, it can often be a little bit distracting with all of these different panels around your photo. You can see on the left, we've got presets, snapshots, history, collections, and if we open them up, it gets even messier. We've got the panels on the right, and of course the image previews at the bottom of the frame. But if you want to cancel all of them out just to focus on your shot, all you need to do is press L, and we're going to get this slightly kind of 50% transparent background. And if we hit L again, it's going to go completely black, and it really helps to, I guess, just bring your image to the center of the frame. And you can also zoom around the image as you like. If we hit L, it brings it back. And another thing you can do here, I guess I'll add this onto tip 9 as well, is you can tap or double tap, right click, and you can change the background. So let's say you might change it to white because perhaps you are living in the Stone Ages and don't use dark mode on your iPhone. You may have a slightly darker grey background on your website, and so you can change it to dark grey to see how it's going to look against that colour, and so on. I've left mine on medium grey for as long as I can remember. I think I'm just used to editing like this now, so yeah, I guess that's it. Moving on to number 10, and a really, really simple but effective little tool, and that is being able to check the before and after of your images. Now to do so, you can simply hit Y, and if you'd like to, you know, expand those images slightly, you can perhaps close the panel on the left and the right and the bottom to show you, you know, this full screen version of your before and after. So if I press Y again, it's going to cancel that out. And another way you can do this is by pressing the, is that a / or a backslash? It'll come up on screen, I can't think. I think it's a / beneath the delete button on Mac, but if you hit that, before, after, and sometimes I sit there going crazy like this. And yeah, it just helps me to see kind of where I started with the image and where I ended up. And I think with that, that's my 10 or maybe 11 tips. I think I went a little over the 10-minute mark. So Harry, as you edit through this, I'm sorry that you need to sit down for another 3.5 minutes of me chatting, but yeah. Guys, I really hope you found this useful. I desperately need to go as I'm heading to the south of Bali today to shoot an exciting project for Etihad, so I'll make sure I get a video, you know, kind of covering what it is I'm gonna be doing there. But yeah, hope these helped. If I missed any tips, which I'm sure I did, because you know, we all have our own ways of using Lightroom and reaching our end results, then please feel free to leave them in the comments. Yeah, I'd be keen to hear from you guys. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video.